Thank you. All right. So just to get us into the space that we're all going to take a deep dive in through a little question answer format, but let's just get in touch with our own selves and our own presence. And so I'm going to invite you for just a few seconds to close your eyes. And just allow yourselves to relax into your body. And allow your breath to guide you to the space within yourselves. And allow that breath to naturally and gently start slowing down just by giving a little attention to it. And as you energetically connect with your inner resourcefulness, I invite you to bring that energy as you connect with others on this call. People you may have never met before or even spoken to. And you may not end up speaking to everybody today, but just connecting energetically with each other, knowing that in essence, each one of us is walking our own path. It's a path that I call back to source. But it's a path to your own resourcefulness and allowing that light to radiate through our presence in this world. And as you come in touch with that light, I invite you to express immense gratitude to whoever brought you here today. And in that spirit of love, grace, and gratitude, I invite you to gently open your eyes. So good evening and welcome. For some of you who have not met, my name is Amrita, and it's my absolute distinct honor, privilege, joy to host Leon VanderPol. Well, he is a PCC coach and many credentials that go with that. But he basically is the founder and leads the Center for Transformation. And amongst the many things that you would have read about Leon or hear from him, I think what I'm deeply attracted to is that he is somebody who walks the talk. And even though he's written this most amazing and fantastic book, it's not every word and every page of this book in some form or the other. I've seen him live it. And so he shares from his lived experience. And that's what makes it so meaningful and joyful to have him here with us today, to collaborate with him to do this work and bring this work to people in this part of our country, and just to welcome him and be part of what he calls deep coaching. But it's so much more than just coaching, and you'll discover that today and as we go along. Thank you, Leon, for always making time for us,
Always.
and for being here at this open house. And you and your work has a really, really special charisma. And the audience that we have here is a mixed audience. There are some people who have already registered for the course. There are some of them who are exploring whether this is something that they would like to take on in January. Some are coaches, very accomplished coaches themselves. And there are a lot who are just, coming in with good faith, have no knowledge or background of coaching. And they're here because I've shared with them that this is a journey of personal transformation and personal mastery. And that's really how I see this work, and how I hold this work. So many of you may know about the Deep Coaching Intensive Program, and we're really delighted that 3 of our programs that we've collaborated with Leon on have always been oversubscribed, and the one in January now has its last 8 spots left. And I really hope some of you will be part of that. And if not now, then whenever the time is ready, I know that you will come back to it, and I trust that. But like I said earlier, that what's most meaningful about this work is the focus on personal mastery. And really we work together, but we work with embracing this inner work first for ourselves. And that's what I mean by personal mastery. And then allowing that to become the space in which we invite participants, our clients, everyone else into that space. And that's what makes it so magical and mysterious also sometimes. But that's really what this whole personal mastery that I keep ringing the bell on is all about, as I see it. So for today's interaction, feel free to type in a question if it comes up for you. A lot of you shared whilst you were registering for the open house that as the question comes up, we may want to ask it there, and feel free to do that. You can either type it in or you can raise your hand, and we'll just invite you in to share it with your own voice. And there are a few people who've asked questions already, and so I've tried to weave that in to like a little story so that it has some beginning, middle, and end. And it's a meaningful interaction and discussion for all of us. Yeah. So with that, I think we can get started. And before I do, I'll just invite Leon to share a little bit about yourself and share anything that you would like to for this audience.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for the gracious introduction. It is always good to see so many faces here joining us, because I think conversations like these matter, and they open doorways to those inner realms where life really happens for all of us. And that's what I love about the work, and that's what I love about these kinds of conversations. So thank you for inviting me again, and for putting together another cohort for India-based residents. I don't know if everyone knows, I'm actually Canadian by birth. I have Dutch parents. They are both immigrants from Holland in the 50s and 60s. So my heritage is Dutch, but I am Canadian by birth. But I call Taiwan home. I've been in the country of Taiwan for 23 years now. My wife is Taiwanese. I have 2 children here. So this is home. I'm actually quite close to all of you. In fact, I just came back on Tuesday from a 3-week tour of India, and it was absolutely phenomenal in every way. I don't know if all of you know this, but we had a retreat to start those 3 weeks. Amrita and I and others here on the call, Priyanka and Nidhi, organized a retreat, 6 days in Goa. And it was for participants of the DCI who'd gone through this course before. 18 of us gathered at this beautiful Portuguese-style resort in Goa. And what I loved about it, and this is really what the work points to, is, when you have a group of people who've gone through a process like this course, which is going to invite, as Amrita says, personal mastery, we're also learning coaching, but there's this personal mastery element. And when we go through that, there's something that's clean, there's something that's cleared in the way that we show up in the world and the way that we show up with each other. And when you gather a group of people like this, it's amazing how the connections just flourish. The masks have fallen away and there's just connection. And I would say, if anything, those days were like a love fest, weren't they? By the end of it, everyone was just riding, Priyanka's nodding, everyone was just riding on this energy that we could call the, love consciousness that felt so rich and so alive. And I talked to a few people who went home afterwards, and I said, how did you land coming out of that retreat, coming out of that energy of connection with other human beings that felt so authentic, so real, so alive? How did it feel to go back to your family, back to your homes, back to life as usual? And a number of them said it was hard. It was hard to go back in, like that re-entry process after being in space for a while. It's a bit challenging. But again, that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. It simply means that people are in our daily lives may not yet be completely familiar with the potentials of their inner reality and the potentials of the kinds of connections that we can have with each other and the way that we relate to each other. And that's what all of this work is pointing to. We're calling it deep transformational coaching because it is transformational work. It's from the inside out. And it brings us into contact with a field of our own inner potential that we may at times glimpse and, feel like, yeah, there's more to life than perhaps I've really allowed myself to experience or know, but we don't necessarily embody it. And that's so much of what this work points to as well, is how we begin to embody these higher states of personal selfhood, really, born of our more authentic self and our inner nature. So that just gives you kind of a hint, just coming back from that retreat and that wonderful time with those people. I took a motorcycle tour of Goa and Karnataka as well, spent some time in Mumbai, spending time with more DCI people, seeing their lives from the inside. I got to visit many different homes and to be invited into people's houses and share with them the experiences of their life and where they are. And I have to say that's one of the most meaningful things that we can do together, is have these kind of connections. So this is also part of it. You join a community of people that are on a path of self-discovery. And when we do that in concert with each other, wow, that's when magic can really happen, both in the coaching space and outside the coaching space. So I'll stop there. That's not much of an introduction about me, I know, but I know, but I'll stop there anyway and see where we go from here.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. And it really points to the possibilities that come with deep coaching. And yet I'm seeing all the people here is as you speak, I keep going back to the retreat and thinking about it, and I have to bring myself back here and say, let's focus here now and at least share with everyone what deep coaching really means. And how is it different when it compares to other transformational coaching programs? And I know when you say it often, that the word transformation is used so loosely and so lightly these days.
Yeah.
And so if you can just shine the light on what deep coaching really means. Yeah.
The piece about comparing it to other programs, I'll leave that one off because in all honesty, I'm not highly versed in what others are doing in terms of program. I know in a very sweeping way, but it's much, I think, more effective if I just speak about really what deep coaching is as an approach, what that means. Okay.
Sure.
And we've touched on it already in this idea. So what I've learned, folks, over the years, I don't know how many of you here today are trained coaches, but generally speaking, there's a few different approaches. We call transactional being one approach, transformational being another approach. And I like to say that somewhere in the middle, there's something we can call developmental coaching. And they exist on a kind of continuum from transactional. They're not separate. They're not categories. They're like a continuum where you move up and down that continuum. different types of approaches work well for different types of people and different contexts of work. So a very transactional approach may be more effective in certain contexts where, for example, so a transactional approach is very much a kind of a way of thinking differently, perceiving differently, and then acting differently. So it's very doing focused types of coaching where I think about what are my options? What are my choices? What are my perceptions? What are the ways I'm thinking about things? What are the things I can do different? What steps can I take? It's more of that kind of transactional, forward moving kind of coaching. You find a lot in organizational work. The developmental realm is somewhere in the middle of that. As we move into that, we begin to shift more towards transformation, where people are going to start to think a little bit more deeply about why they experience the world the way they do. And many people who are kind of really interested in learning about themselves, say through an indicator like StrengthsFinder or MBTI or one of those other many different kinds of assessors that we can take, we begin to learn about ourselves. And, oh, I'm good at this, and I enjoy that, and these are my strengths and my talents and my gifts, and how can I leverage these, and what do I need to do to be more effective in my work? And so people are thinking a little bit more deeply about themselves, but it's not the deepest of the deep, let's put it that way. There's still another layer that we can go beyond to get to a more really authentic understanding of self. And that kind of layer, if you will, is our kind of egoic sense of self, like the shell of ego that we've all constructed over a lifetime, that often we're taught. We're taught about what we should value. We're taught about what we ought to believe. We're taught about how we succeed in life and how we survive. And we take all of this on. We take on certain structures of mind that keep us living in a kind of safe container, if you will. If I have this belief and I hold on to these ways of living in the world, I will be safe, I'll be secure, people will think well of me, I will have what I need to have, I will have the accolades, I will have the position, I will have the finances, and we kind of hold on to this kind of structured self that we've been taught is what is valuable in the world. And we aim for that in many different ways. And when we've gotten there, we say, well, I've made it. But to move beyond that structure of thought, that kind of ego-based structure of thought, it requires a kind of dissolution process, a kind of, how do you say, a shaking up of the status quo, of the way we think the world really is and the way we think of ourselves within this world. And what I call that is the beginning of a transformational journey, kind of like this idea of who we are, not the truth of who we are, but this idea of who we are that we have taken on over a lifetime of conditioning is beginning to kind of crack and crumble a bit. And there's this kind of sense that, okay, maybe there's more to myself in this world than I have ever really been taught. Maybe there is more to the work that I'm here to do. Maybe there's a purpose that I'm here to fulfill. Maybe there's a higher potential within me. Some people even are asking this really deep question like, well, who am I? Like, who am I at the core of my being? And how do I even know what that is? How do I even express that? How do I even live that in the world? Like, what is that? There's something there, but I have no idea what. But this process of transformation begins to take people on that, beyond that ego structure, that sense of self that has been taught to us about who we are. And now we're really asking the question, well, is that true? Is that really who I am? Is that really what I should value? Or is there something beyond that for me? So when we talk about transformational coaching, we're really talking about supporting people who are going into that personal process of self-discovery at a core level of mind, where they're really, really looking at deep, deep layers and asking core questions like, who am I? What is my purpose? What am I here for in this world? What is it that's trying to express through me? What is this higher self that I'm sensing is there, but don't really understand yet? What does this mean for me? These kind of questions. And at the same time, they start to look at ways of embodying, how you say this, new ways of being, like new ways of being in the world. So one of the key questions we work with in this transformational realm is the question, who do I choose to be? A choice in being So there's this being level awareness that begins to emerge. So this is something that's not often touched on in developmental and in transactional coaching
Transaction.
approaches, right? We get into this being level awareness. Who am I being in this moment, in this life? And what you'll find is that the transformational journey kind of begins with that question. Who am I being? And then we start to notice, well, I'm making choices. I'll just give you an example. Like, let's say I'm choosing to be confident, or I'm choosing to be positive, or I'm choosing to be peaceful. I want to be that, not once in a while, not occasionally, like I bump into confidence. I want to be the living embodiment of confidence, or I want to be the living embodiment of peace. I want to be the living embodiment of love, or whatever that choice is. Okay. Then we start to notice that there are all these layers that are in the way of that. Yeah, I'm not being peace 100% of my day. There's a lot of times when things irritate me and I find I get angry, frustrated, upset. I get caught up in stress, worry, fatigue, whatever it may be. And I'm not that, which I think I want. But okay, so now we have to start to look at all those layers. What's there that is standing in the way of me being the living embodiment of that which I desire or choose to be? And that becomes its own kind of transformation right there. Because we need to look at both this idea of what I need to let go of at a core level, like some really deep stuff sometimes needs to be let go of to be confident in this world, or to be at peace, or to be love, whatever it might be. Core deep stuff has to be looked at and let go of. And at the same time, we have to tap into this emerging sense of selfhood. Like, what am I becoming? But I don't really know what that is yet, but there's something that I'm becoming. So this whole dynamic of the letting go, the letting come, and this emergent selfhood piece, what we could call the authentic self, or the higher self, or the true self, that's the realm of deep transformational work. We're not just looking at my perceptions and my options and my strategies and actions I can take any longer. We're way beyond that. We're looking at this very often sticky, sometimes shadowy, sometimes dark, sometimes light, sometimes joyful kind of realm in which more of this really authentic selfhood resides, but often gets covered up by, as I said, a lifetime of conditioned thought that have been imposed upon you by family, teachers, culture, profession, whatever it may be, the masks we wear. Professional coach, professional businessman, mother, father, son, whatever it may be. All these masks get piled on in all these ways. I'm not safe in the world. I put on a mask to show that I'm safe, I'm tough. I'm not, I feel alone in this world. I put on a mask to show that I've got lots of friends. All these masks we wear to cover these deep, deep, deep wounds, if you will. So in deep transformational work, that's the realm we want to work in. So to the very long answer to a very simple question, as we move further down this continuum from the transactional to the deep, we're going to go more deeply into the human psyche. And we're going to really look at what's in the human psyche and understand how to work with that from a coaching perspective. And the way that we primarily work with that is we work at it with ourselves first. Like we are our own test subjects in a sense. Yeah, we are going to work with this before we say, well, I know how to work with you with it. It's I've worked with it with myself. So this is the personal mastery piece that Amrita keeps pointing to, is that as we work on ourselves, we become ones who are capable of doing this work with others. And that's the journey. So I'll stop there, Amrita, because as I said, that was a lot, and that may have just made more questions come up. Everyone's totally confused.
Yeah. No, Ashish is here, and I had tied in his question next, but you've spoken a lot about it as well. And his question was, what's the connection between coaching and personal mastery?
Mhm.
So since Ashish is here and Leon has just shared so much, I'm just going to ask you to check in with you to see if there's something more that you'd like to know or understand, or even just share or comment on anything that Leon has shared in connection with your question. Ashish.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for putting me on the spot, Amrita. Yeah, I think I mean a lot of that really quite resonated with me. I do agree and believe that, if you're not right, if you're not true to yourself, you can't be true to others. So I agree with that kind of personal mastery. But I really liked the way Leon explained transactional development, transformational coaching, and maybe mastery as an addendum, because it made me realize that I keep thinking at a very transactional level, just the way I try. I mean, everyone tries to improve themselves, right? Everyone tries to be a better person. And I just made me realize that I do think very much at that transactional level. And it's a very interesting observation for me. And I'd love to learn more about it, and hopefully be able to dig deeper.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, Leon.
Yeah, that's for me, that's the work that I personally love myself. I used to work in the executive leadership realm as a coach, facilitator, as a trainer. That's kind of where I began my work. And I was always finding that there was a limit to where we could go. People were keen, as you said, to develop themselves. They were keen to learn. But often it was in the context of so that I can progress in my career, or so that I can lead my team better, which is a form of me progressing better in my career. And that will lead to something. So there was often this kind of external motivation for the kind of growth that was happening. But I also found that there was a limit to how deep people would go with me in those contexts. And they would never really reveal the deepest, shadowy, most painful parts of their lives. That was neatly tucked away very, very deeply. And they would say so much, but very rarely would we go into the past and talk about those early formative years in which certain things happened that gave rise to the very behaviors that they exhibit now, right? Or the way that they perceive the world now. Like, we don't want to go there to work on what's happening now, even though that's root cause kind of thing. So I felt there always that limit, and that's what eventually led me to leave the corporate world and kind of venture on my own trajectory with this work, was because I wanted to know what it was like to sit with another human being who was fully self-revealed with me. What does it take for me as a coach to be with another person so that they are so comfortable, safe, trusting of me that they will reveal all, right? Reveal all and do that work with me. And that was a question I held. I didn't have the answer at first. I didn't know what it would take, but now I do. It took a while to get there, 15 years, a journey of experimentation and a lot of my own inner work. And that's what I eventually came to find out, was the stuff that I'd been taught in coaching school about what it takes to coach someone was not enough. It wasn't enough. It didn't change me enough. I had a toolkit that I could use with others, but it hadn't changed me at a core level. And it was only when I began to do work to change me at a core level, when I became self-revealed, and when I did the deep work on the wounds of my past, and when I did the work to step into embody these new ways of being, suddenly I noticed, whoa, people are not only just coming out of the woodwork to work with me, they're completely self-revealed very quickly. They just, like, they want to pour their lives out to me. And I don't mean in a therapeutic kind of way. I mean in service of this journey of letting go and letting come, the transformational dynamics, right? There was something deep going on within them that they wanted to reveal. And they could see in me the one who understood, not from a book. Like, I read a great book on how to coach you deeply. I went to a class, I got a certificate, but because I did the work. And then that's when the magic happened. And that's when, I knew, okay, so this is not about techniques and tools and models and frameworks, which is what transactional coaching often points to. It's about ways of being with others that enable a certain kind of revelation to happen because of the safety that they feel with me and what they see in me as one who's done the work for themselves. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it always does, Leon. And I think it's triggered so many questions that are just coming in the chat box. I think I have to let go of everything that I had thought that I would weave in today and just let come whatever is coming in through the chat box for this conversation. So, so I'm just going to, Alka sent me a direct message, and she's, may not know whether her signal comes or goes. So, Alka, come on in and just ask your question, whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to just not be seen and still ask my questions. I'm really sorry about it. This just came up unexpectedly, the road trip. So, what I really like about what you just said, Leon, was this deep inquiry into your own being. And the reason I'm interested in this program is because I'm not a certified coach, but my work over the years has involved a lot of dealing with people and some kind of coaching, for want of a better word, because it's very one on one and it pushes them or explores with them different directions. So now I'm taking this work to the social sector. And I think before I uh, do this more with others, what you just talked about sounds very interesting to explore about myself. So, all I wanted to share was that in case I drop off because of the connectivity, I will hopefully see you at the session. And I'm
Yes.
really extremely sorry about this last minute change because I had hoped to be present fully with all of you. But since that is not the case and I may drop off because of connectivity, I do hope to see and explore this whole course with you. So thank you very much for the
No
explanation.
apologies necessary.
Yeah,
It is
fantastic.
as it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll ask the other question in context of this is that how do you balance holding space for another as you nurture that space that you hold for yourself, and keeping this coaching and personal mastery piece, that thread of that conversation that Ashish started and you shared so much about. So how do you balance holding both these spaces? Uh, does it happen together, separately, in tandem?
Can you repeat that? Was holding space for self and holding
How do
space?
you balance holding space for another as you nurture the space you hold for yourself?
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure the word is balance because I've never looked at it in that way as a
Okay.
kind of balancing act between two things. What I have noticed is that the journey of transformation requires a tremendous amount of time, personal time for self-reflection and self-care. Time for healing, time for exploring your deeper nature in different ways. And whenever that gets sacrificed, the practitioner will quite readily find that it affects everything in their life. They might find themselves feeling stress more readily. Might find themselves being more fatigued. They might find themselves overburdened, saying yes to too many things. There's all kinds of ways that being out of alignment within yourself can happen. And often the people who are doing this work are simultaneously desiring to do this work with others. It is true that as you go on this journey with yourself, and those who are of the coaching mindset or the facilitator mindset, or simply who work in certain arenas in which you are there for others, giving care in some form, holding space in some form, there is usually a kind of simultaneous thing happening. I'm doing this work for myself, and I may not be through it all yet. There may still be much to be done, and I still need tremendous amounts of personal time, but I still want to be there for others. And that natural desire to want to be there for others must be honored. It must be honored, but care is needed to make sure that we don't begin to overgive and overextend. Because one of the kind of, how you say, vulnerabilities perhaps of being one who cares tremendously about the well-being of others is the tendency to put others' needs ahead of our own when we see that other person in some kind of distress or need. Yeah. And then when that person sees that we're the one who gives the care, the attention, the energy, they can begin to demand it, need it, and want it. Okay. And for the one then who has not yet really themselves landed in a place of knowing how they show up in the world in this way, again, wanting to care and wanting to serve, it can be easy to start giving more and more than you have, and losing that connection with yourself and losing that sense of what is really right and good for you because you're so busy caring for others and giving it away. So some people who are work in the energy field, energy healing field, often talk about people who will show up like this and kind of vampire your energy. The word is vampire. I'm not sure exactly. They kind of suck your energy away. But I don't want to put that fully on the other person, because what the other person is doing is responding to what they see in you. And that is one who's willing to give their energy. Right? It's not all the vampires' fault that they're thirsty for blood. I mean, they're going to go get it where they can, but who's the one that's kind of saying, here, my neck? And that's where the dance happens. And that's when practitioners of this work in any form of, I say, care work can really fall into that trap and lose connection with themselves and their ground of being and their own source of energy and their own their own knowing of what is true and good and right. Yeah. So what happens through this work is as you have these kind of encounters with people, you're going to be tested and starting to need to find, like, when do I pull back? When do I say yes? When do I need to step back? And how do I begin to create for myself a fairly solid field that cannot so easily be drained by other people's demands? Now, when I say solid field, I'm talking kind of an energetic field. And that takes time to create, to the point where you might find that I'm so grounded in my own energetic field that really no matter who's around me and what they're doing, it has very little impact on me. Now, that's a very high level of personal mastery again. That doesn't mean we don't need time for self-care and all of that, but you'll notice that because you're so grounded in your own sense of being, your own energetic field, it's very easy to just share energy with others because you're connected to this really deep source, but you're also very aware of your energetic boundaries and what can be taken from you, and that's just solid. But when you're still on the journey, which many practitioners of this work are, many people who come to this course are, they're not there yet. They're still in their own stuff, and they're wanting to serve, and I'm still in my own stuff, and I'm not there yet, but how do I? And then there is a challenge to face. So I'm not sure the answer is how do I do both, but it is a learning journey that is essential to this work to understand, okay, what do I need to do to ensure self-care for myself so that I'm not getting my energy drained, that I am finding ways to support myself in my own process, which is to make time and space for the inner work for me. Yeah. And if I've got a full-time job and I'm doing this work and I've got a family to raise and I've got hobbies that I'm involved in and I'm involved in 3 communities, time can be scarce. Yeah. Okay. Right. And now I want to coach too, and I want to help people. Okay. We become susceptible to the drain. Right. Especially during this period of our own deep inner work. Yeah. It's when we come out of it that we start to notice, okay, I'm solid in this. It's very difficult for people to take my energy away now, because part of it is that I'm so grounded in my own source energy that I'm channeling the energy to others. They can have all they want. But there was a period there when 1 hour with someone would exhaust me and I'd grab a nap afterwards. Right? I was so drained by the experience. So it changes over time.
Yeah.
So self-care is a big part of our work, even as we do it for others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that. And I'll just chime in with my own personal story with this work, and that that is and it. So being a certified deep transformational coach and having all those great labels and doing this work that I absolutely love is one part, and making that time for my own self and for my own work, I would see as 2 distinct different parts. And one of the biggest things that came from this retreat for me that we just went on is that commitment to my own personal journey above and ahead of everyone and everything else. And that's really what has helped me keep that balance between the work I do for myself and the work that I serve in service of others. And so I think that a balance can be maintained and is being maintained, but it comes from making that commitment to do your own work for yourself. And for me, it is above and ahead of everything else, because anyone who's seen me or known me I've been a Florence Nightingale avatar, I think, in putting myself ahead, putting everyone else ahead of me, and making that shift and allowing people to see that, oh, she's changed and I'm okay with that change, is a big part of the work that I do for myself every single day. So it is possible. So I have, I know Nalina has a question and Sulochana has many thoughts to share, but I'm also seeing Boishaki's hand raised. So I'll invite you in first and then go to the next.
Thank you very much. I'm actually going to take the opportunity to kind of ask for some advice here. And I'm conscious I'm changing the mood of the so-called room as such. I am a practicing HR professional, and therefore for about 18 to 20 years of experience behind me, and therefore as a part of my work, coaching is something that we do as we go along, right? We get internally trained, and that's a part of our job. In my current role, I've felt the need of being trained further, and therefore I'm exploring. So I am in the exploratory phase at this moment. When I've been listening to the last 45 minutes to the conversation, it's left me wondering whether something like this. So first of all, very interesting and very enriching, revealing in some ways, but it's left me wondering whether this is something that I should consider once I have had formal training in coaching and got myself some sort of a certification, got my hands dirty in a manner of speaking, before really coming into this space, because this seems really deep, exploratory, and without the real experience behind me, will it really be of value to me and to the fellow participants? So that's a long-winded question in some ways.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Do you want to speak to it, Amrita? Go ahead.
You speak, I'll speak after you.
Okay, because it's a question that we get at the center all the time, because people come in not just through the India program, but through our global programs as well, from all different backgrounds. And many of them don't have a coaching background. And they go into the program and they do wonder, wow, I'm sitting in this room and there are these experienced coaches. They're obviously so knowledgeable and so versed in coaching. Look at them go. And here I am with, what knowledge do I have? How can I possibly do this work? And I always chuckle a little bit, because that's completely normal to have these thoughts going into a program that's called a coach training. And it seems so advanced. But one thing that I have noticed, and it's kind of fun to watch, is that all of these trained coaches, within a couple of weeks, recognize the size of the unlearning that they have to do. And they start to feel really unconfident. So let's say the coaches came in, confidence was here, and the non-coaches here. Very quickly, that confidence level kind of ends up at about the same place, because the coaches are realizing, okay, so everything that I've been taught, it's not that I have to discard all of it, but I have to completely recontextualize how it's utilized. And I have to completely go through this obvious transformational journey on my own to really grasp the nature of what we're talking about here. And boy, do I have to unlearn some things. So they're going into their own confusion, reintegration. And the people who are new to this work don't have the burden of having to unlearn, if you will, certain coaching techniques or methodologies that they've been trained in. One of the hardest things I see coaches doing, and they'll say this, they'll do a practice session and I observe it, and I'll give some feedback on something that they're doing, like asking, really trying to ask a lot of very powerful questions and keeping keeping the session moving to questions, because they were trained. We asked questions to move the session forward. And I say to them, why are you driving so hard through questions? Questions have a place in helping a person reveal, but you're driving the session to some kind of an outcome through your questions. What's going on there? And then they're like, oh yeah, right. Well, that's just my training going on here, that I feel I have to provide value. I have to provide an outcome. I have to get somewhere in this space. It's like, but this is transformational work. Where are we going? So then they have to sit back. And so there's this unlearning. So having said that, then we come to the end of the course, and I do an assessment of sessions. And I can tell you, if I had no list of who was a trained coach and who was a non-trained coach, I couldn't tell the difference. They end up at the end in the exact same spot. And I find that fascinating. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that the trained coaches do better in the assessment than the untrained. There's actually some of the trained coaches do very well, and some of the untrained coaches do very well, and some of the untrained don't do as well, and some of the trained don't do as well. It's like, it's all over the place, and there's no correlation between what I came in with and what I'm going out with. So that's why I say making this choice needs to be more on a kind of that deeper personal level. Is this really the path for me? Does this excite me? Does this enliven me? Am I passionate about this kind of conversation, this kind of work? And if that's the feeling, then this idea that I have to have a certain foundational understanding of coaching is not actually, that's the transactional realm. So we're moving into the transformational. We let go of this idea that I have to be or have something in order to do something.
And my quick response to everything else that Leon said, and in a very I would say logical way, and I'm going to see it from a more heart-centered space, really, is that when there is when you receive that call, I feel that everyone who's here for today's session is here because they answered a call and they chose to be here. And so, I say to anyone who calls is take that leap of faith and see what happens and have fun with it. And that's how I invite people into this program. And it's a program for yourself as much as you think that it's a program that's going to give you everything that you need to work with others. It starts so much from yourself. And so if you're here and if you have that sense of faith to jump in and experiment and see and trust, then it's the right time for you to answer the call. And if not, the call may come again and it may not, and that's also fine. But I like to look at things in life from that perspective. So if it helps in any which way, that's my take on it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so it ties up nicely with Nalina's question. I was asking about what's to be unlearned. And I know that she's a trained coach. And so I'll invite you in to ask whatever comes to your mind, Nalina, and then we'll come to you, Salochna.
Thank you, Amrita. It's so lovely to see you. I can't resist saying that I'm so happy to see you so right after all that you've gone through.
Thank you.
If I could do that. Yeah. Leon, hi, just really waiting for January. So there's, one big thing to look forward to the new year. I've just posted my question. I'll just read it out again. What does it take to unlearn? And how do you know that unlearning is happening?
Yeah. What does it take to unlearn? Actually, can I ask you first that question? Like, from your experience, what does it take to unlearn?
Jesus, I didn't expect this. Okay.
No, but it's a good question.
Oh, well, I'll just give you what my understanding is. I mean, not really that it's crystallized. No. Not to take whatever one has imbibed as dogma, but be open to a new experience.
Yeah. I think you couldn't have said it better. I mean, that isn't that it? Isn't it about the willingness to hold very lightly everything that has come before? All that we have learned, all that we've understood, all that we claim to know, just holding it very lightly.
Mm.
It doesn't define us. It's not who we are. It's a body of knowledge and understanding, okay, but it's not self-defining. Some people hold what they know as a self-definition, so let's hold it very lightly. And in that lightness, it doesn't mean it's wrong, but it just means it's open to something. It's open to being shape-shifted. It's open, like an open system for new information to come in, to re-inform or re-inspire that which we know, right? And that's through often experience. As we allow new experiences to come in very openly, they then shift the way that we show up in the world. So I think you said it very right. Just that willingness to hold things lightly and stay open. Hold lightly and stay open.
Mhm.
And then sometimes there is a letting go process, almost a conscious letting go of something. I've noticed that too. Like people say, okay, this is no longer what I choose to believe. This is no longer of value to me in where I want to go. And I have to consciously, intentionally let
Mhm.
something go. And that might be a mental process, an emotional process, an energetic process, but there is that. So that also can come into it for some people too, because in the letting go, we make space for whatever the new may be that wishes to come in,
Oh, wow.
right? The
Thank you.
emerging potential. Yeah. So
Thank
when I
you.
say people go through an unlearning process, often the issue for them is not that they have to unlearn, it's that they're resisting the new learning. It's resistance that makes it hard for them, that makes it a struggle. Because in there are thoughts, often concerning thoughts, like, well, if I let this go, then what will this mean for me? For example, using the example I gave earlier of well, my role as a coach is to ask powerful questions that help shape perspectives and drive new behaviors. And I say to them, well, what happens if you let go of that thought that your role is to ask powerful questions? There's a resistance to that because they don't necessarily understand what replaces that. And it's what they've been taught. It's been their success strategy. It's been my success strategy. It works. So now what do I do when I'm being invited to let go of that? Well, there's some inner resistance, and that's where the struggle is, holding on to, right? So just recognizing that's all part of the process. We don't want to judge that. We want to lean into that. Okay, so what's that resistance all about? Let's really look at the resistance, and often underneath that, go a little deeper. Let's go deeper. Is, well, if I don't ask questions, then maybe I won't be adding value to my clients. Oh, let's go deeper beyond that. Well, what does that mean? Well, that might mean that I'm not going to get work any longer. Well, before you know it, they're homeless on the street because they're not asking powerful questions. Like that's how it cascades down in the way fear works, right? So I won't get any work and I'll be homeless kind of. But all these deep fears are at play. So I better keep these questions alive because clearly they work. And that's what I've been trained to do. So resistance is one of the big derailers of the de-learning process or the unlearning process.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah.
The first layer of the iceberg, a lot more to go.
Yeah. Go ahead, Salochna. I'll just invite you in to share as well.
Hi, Amrita. Hi, Priyanka. I'm really excited because I love the thought of, putting your own mask first before you, try to help others.
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very wonderful, ideology because like Leon very right, when you're into a energy field, right, you can see some people sucking the energy. And I think that's one point that I have really noted for myself in terms of, how do you draw the line and say, okay, I'm getting drained. So I need to have my own, energy balances in place. So thanks, Leon. That really gets me excited. Coming to my question, right? And this is a pretty recency effect that I have. I'm sorry if my question sounds very long winding. So my question is that we're all driven by our internal conflicts, right? And we have our own ways of dealing with it, both in personal and professional life. And what I have, been hearing is it's a lot of self-exploratory journey start from, and then you see how do you hold that same space for others. So when what I'd like to understand is that how does this whole internal conflict sort of manifest when we are dealing with ourselves and others, and when this manifestation is happening, how do will this whole program helped me know that, okay, I'm getting derailed. I need to, pull back my tracks and get back on track and say that, no, I'm getting my own internal conflict is taking over. So, just to help you understand the context, if I am in a coaching relationship with somebody and there is a fundamental disconnect in our personal value system, right? So, but there's a demand that I coach. So there is a conflict there, right? And you try your utmost, but it's not easy, and you tend to sort of slip off and say, we don't see the same side of the coin. So somewhere there is a conflict. So yeah, so that's a very long winding question, and I'd love to hear from both you, Leon and Amrita.
I am so sorry. Could you take all of that and put it into, I didn't catch the core question. Maybe Amrita did, and you can
Okay, so my
help with that, Amrita. I don't know.
Short question is, how do we deal with value conflicts, and how do we see it getting manifested both in our personal journey and when we are in a coaching conversation?
So value conflicts meaning between you and
sometimes we are expected to do certain things that probably is contrary to the values that we hold core to ourselves.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
But
yes.
there is a demand that you need to let go of that thing for certain, for maybe a short period or maybe a prolonged period.
Yes.
So that is conflict at level, personal level, right?
Yes.
Second level of conflict that happens is that, for example, if you and I don't have the same value system, especially when we are working, right? There is bound to be a conflict. But if there is a need for you to coach me, if you are in a setup where you have to coach me, like for example, if I'm reporting into you and you have to coach me, then how do we deal with that conflict and keep that conflict aside and hold that space for each other?
Okay. see if I got it. This is about conflicting values between you and others.
Yeah.
Others that you may be working with, others that you may be coaching.
Yeah.
And how to reconcile.
Yeah.
In those times when the first example you gave was when I'm asked to do something that is outside of that which I value. And
Yeah.
the second was around if I'm working with someone and I must work with them. How do I reconcile the value differences that we may hold?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So all I'm going to do is take this from a deep transformational perspective, because I recognize there will be many, many answers to this, depending on who you talk to and depending on their own personal perspective, transactional, developmental, transformational, kind of way they look at it. So from a deep coaching perspective, we're not at all concerned about the other. We're only concerned with how you are choosing to show up in this world. And the choices that you're making for yourself, they're either in alignment with who you are or are not. And if you say, well, I'm forced to make choices that are not in alignment with my deepest values, then I'm going to ask, why are you doing that? And you might say, well, I'm actually required to do it. It's part of my job. And I say, well, why would you be engaging in any activity that is not aligned to your deepest core values? And you might say, well, because I need to earn an income. I mean, if I don't do this, then there's no income. It's like, okay, so let's go into that, because what I'm hearing in there is fear of loss of something. So let's go into that. So we're just going to go down and down and down until we get to this point where you are really clear on why you are saying yes to engaging in something that is not aligned to the deepest, truest part of you. Because from a deep transformational perspective, that's insanity. But from a transactional perspective, that might be perfect sanity. Sure, I let go of my value systems for a while. I get some cash, get some clients. It's already good. Works for them, works for me. I just have to turn a blind eye for a little while to the corruption that I see all around me, but it's all good. I'm giving a silly example, but you know what I'm saying, right? We just sacrifice some part of ourselves for something that we desire on another level. But at a deep transformational level, people are asking themselves, what do I truly value? Truly, deeply value? Am I being that in this world? What's getting in the way of me being and showing up in every space as the representation of that value lived to its core? And why would I operate in any other way other than that which is true to my highest self and nature? And those are tough questions to answer. They're not easy. but they take you into that place where you can really see with clarity what's really going on for you. And very often we get to a point where we see fear, where fear resides. Now, fear is a dear friend of all of us. It drives an immense amount of our behavior and our choices. Often we are very much unaware of the degree to which fear drives our choices and even our perceptions and the way of seeing ourselves and others in the world. And when we get to fear and we start to work on that, you become clean, you become clear, you become self-expressed at a core level, fearless. I don't mean fearless as in bravado fearless. I mean that one without fear. And then notice the choices you make. And then notice the choices you make. And then notice how life starts to align to you. Saying, well, if that's the value that you choose to embody in all ways, well, we're going to bring you work that allows you to live that value. We're not even going to waste our time bringing you work that doesn't align to you because you have already committed to this way and you stand for that. So how can we bring you work that doesn't, any work that we bring you that doesn't align, you're just going to say, I have no time for that. You see, that's the deep transformational perspective on it.
Thank you so much. I think that gives a lot of clarity. And I think you very rightly brought it. I think it all stems from fear. And, you know, I think somewhere we need to learn to face our fear and learn how to deal with it. Thank you so much. That was really great. Thank you.
And I'll just add an addendum to that's part of the program that you're signing up for, to come in terms, in face of it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And know that you'll be in a space and an environment of trust and of love, and where you're allowed to be that and face it and grow from that.
Yeah.
So, so welcome aboard.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amrita.
Yeah. Okay, so let me, Roshni has her hand up. So if you want to come in with your question, and then I will see if there's time for some of the other questions that came in through as well.
Sorry, I'm in the car, but I decided to join the session anyway. And I'm really excited actually to be part of the course. And I actually, it's just funny because I'm doing something completely different that I would have never thought of in my life. And I've signed up for something like this. And my father kind of asked me, he's like, are you serious? You want to do this? Like, why don't you find another teacher next year? He's like, why do you have to do it this year? And I was like, Dad, sorry. Like, I just know that Leon is going to be my teacher. And so I am really signing up for this year. And I have to do it right now. So, it's just been crazy. The last few months actually have been very, very turbulent for me. And I've been going through this inner turmoil and inner journey that I mentioned to you all. And I'm learning so much. I'm reading a lot, and I'm feeling disconnected from people. I'm feeling connected at times. There's just a lot of emotions in play, and I'm being really strong about it. And but one thing that is a question that came to me was, this course is going to require me to maybe learn a lot of techniques and all of that. But these days, I feel like in my life in the last few months, all the decisions that I'm making, or every move that I'm making, is being guided by some sort of intuition. I'm really not looking at any technique, any practice, nothing. I'm just being guided. I feel very sure that I'm being guided. And that's why every decision that I'm making in my life is coming from some inner guidance. And so I'm worried. I'm like, I'll be learning all these things and looks like I'll not remember anything, because no matter what I'm being taught today, I don't remember anything. You ask me tomorrow, I'll not remember. And so I'm just like, it's just that there's a lot of, I don't know what to say. There's a lot of this feeling that I really want to learn, but I don't know if I'll actually be learning, because at the end of the day, whatever I'm doing these days is by intuition. So I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
I just want to correct one of your assumptions. And that was when you said, I'm in this course going to be learning a lot of techniques. And I was shaking my head as in, no, you will not learn a lot of techniques. This is not a that's transactional. We're going to teach you techniques, models, systems, frameworks, you name it. You're going to pile it on, and you're going to have to somehow integrate all this into your head, and you're going to have to coach that way. No, this is a intuitive, heart-centered sensing journey for ourselves and when we work with others. It is not based on models, techniques, and frameworks. It's based on how we listen in through the deepest part of ourselves, intuitively sensing into what's happening in another, and how we foster greater self-awareness in others through that. It's presence-based work. It's presence-based work. And yes, you will probably forget everything you've learned at that intellectual level. And I can give you proof of that because at this retreat that I just did with Amrita, I started the retreat with a deep coaching quiz. And I put everybody into groups of 3. And I said, here, I had 30 questions and everybody failed miserably. It was hilarious. Watching all of them just moaning and groaning about what they couldn't remember from the course. But that's just the intellectual stuff. Every single person carried the course here, right? That's where it matters. That's where all learning happens, at core levels of mind and heart and being. And that's what you'll carry into the world. All that intellectual stuff, that's nice. And it's great if you can recite it and perhaps even pass the quiz, but it's not the course.
Interesting. Thank you so much. I'm kind of relieved to hear that actually, that I don't have to really read. Like, I mean, I've done my MBA, so I know I'm like, oh my God, is it going to be like a lot of all of that? But I'm so glad to know that it's not going to be anywhere close to a lot of intellectual stuff. Yeah.
There is intellectual stuff, but it's in service of kind of opening doorways of understanding to the deeper realm. So sometimes the intellect still gets involved. Like I could present a concept in front of you that helps you open to an understanding of why I experience something the way I experience it. And then I can feel into that, think into that experience. But it's not so that you have to remember the concept, if that makes sense, right? But
Yes, it makes
concepts are
sense.
wonderful doorway openers, if you will, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm just going to, steer this conversation forward. And the couple of people who asked all the corporate questions have just logged off because they had to go off for another meeting. And since I will share the recording back with them, I'll just say in response to the whole, does this work in a corporate context? I can only share from my own example is that all the work that I do is within the corporate context. And the only work that I do is this work. So it definitely works in the corporate context, and it completely depends on your conviction with which you offer this work in that context. So I'll just say that for the recording, really for people who listen to it later, because there were several questions around that, and I'll bypass that in the interest of time and take another meaningful question. And this is really on how does one know that this kind of work is the kind of work that I am ready to take on. We had done a fireside chat with Leon earlier about what does it take to become a transformational coach? What are the signals of transformation? And I may have already shared it with some of you, but if anyone wants it, then great. But I'll just get Leon to speak about it very briefly as how do I know that I'm ready to take this on? It sounds really interesting, very deep. And, how do I know that I'm ready? So Leon, if you can just allude to that a little bit.
I always say if it makes you feel alive right now, if it's putting a smile on your face, if you notice your heart racing a little bit faster, if your mind is whirling with ideas, thoughts, if it lights you up on the inside, you're ready for the work, right? If the desire is to know yourself, to live more purposefully, to live more meaningfully, to be a more brilliant, authentic presence in the world, and to help other people on their paths of self-discovery and enabling others to grow into their truest, highest forms of themselves, this work is for you. And I don't just mean that as you're doing coaching, because I do training, facilitation, coaching, teaching. I wear many different hats, but I show up as I am in all of these different ways. And the work finds its way through me in all these different forms of I am that I take in this world. So it's not just that I've got to be a coach to do this. That's not it at all. It's shifting your own way of being in this world, the nature and quality of your presence. So I just say, if it lights you up, if it enlivens you, if it makes your heart sing, you're like, yeah, we're talking my language. The course could very well be for you. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you. And the last piece on how does one integrate this form, and I know Leon's center used to be called Center for Transformational Coaching and Living.
Yes.
And I loved that. I absolutely loved that. And
it's too long. People couldn't remember it.
But that's really the essence, of this work as I see it. But how do you, if Leon, you can share a few parting tips, maybe
on integration?
On integration, as being a deep transformational coach and living this as an embodied truth.
Well, integration is an ongoing process in the work, because integration really just means kind of a coming into an understanding at a core level of mind, of body, of emotion. And it just kind of comes in. What we work with in the course are what we call transformative practices. So instead of models or frameworks, we work with practices. And the practices are designed to create a kind of set of conditions. And I call it the optimal set of conditions in which transformative growth can happen. So I'll give you a simple example of one of the practices, the first practice, which is slow it all down and sync with the rhythm of life and spirit. So this idea of slowing life down is a condition that fosters transformative growth. I talked earlier about the need for people on this path for more time, space for reflection and inner work. There is a need to slow things down that people have inherently when they go on a transformational journey. And when they don't, they bump up hard against that reality, and often then stress and fatigue and other things come into their life in a big way. But it's very difficult for people to slow life down when they're used to a life on the go and making things happen and being productive and getting things done and getting to the top. And that's the life. And it's like, wait a minute, if we're going to do transformational work, if I'm going to integrate the energies, the thought patterns, the meanings of greater truths, if I'm going to do that integration work, I need to make time and space in myself and in my life. Okay, I got to slow it all down. So we start to create this singular condition that allows for deeper integration. That doesn't mean you never do things fast, but when it comes to transformational work, a slowed down life, slowed down rhythm is conducive, if not an accelerator of transformation. So this is why when we talk about integration, is really just allowing all of that knowledge. It's kind of like, it's like recalibrating your whole system, your whole way of being to a whole nother paradigm of experience. One in which different thought patterns, different energies, things work differently in these different paradigms, but you have to recalibrate you because you are used to something different. And so that process of recalibration requires deep integration of energies, thoughts, different kinds of patterns of behavior, you name it, all so that you be that, eventually kind of be that which you desire to be in the world. I hope that again makes sense. You may want to add to this one, Amrita, because it was your question, I think. You speak to it too.
No, it was a question that probably was in my mind many years ago as I, got attracted to the Center for Transformational Coaching and Living and seeing how to integrate that in my life. But like Leon shared, one of the things that you will get as part of the program is this book. And this book is A Shift in Being, which is written by Leon, which forms the perfect companion to the course. And I guarantee you, if you're an avid reader, once you start reading it, you won't be able to put it down. But each time you pick it up to read, you'll find different and more and deeper meaning to it. And all the 9 practices that Leon has shared are part of this book. And as part of the course that we take you through, you read, you bring that, and you have a whole week to integrate that into your life. And it just doesn't stop there. The book continues with you. The experience that you've had over the 21 weeks continues to stay and grow with you. And it is a continuous process. And slowing down, one of the first practices is, oh yeah, this is exactly what I want in my life. And sometimes life doesn't allow you to slow down. And so then you get into that whole space of it. But how can I come back to that which creates this optimal condition? For me, has been my own journey in terms of integrating these practices and making them my own in my own life and seeing the richness of my life. You know, Nalina shared earlier that and many of you already know, my ability to be able to take care of my mom who passed away 15 days ago and be here with you and share with so much joy. A lot of it, large part of it, is because of the work. And that's really the integration process. So, I really welcome each one of you into this journey. It's a courageous journey. And for those who choose to take that leap of faith and join us, I really welcome you all and look forward to seeing you in January. And for those who don't choose at this time, we're always connected in more ways than we know, and the time will come and we'll still be around. So I think really with that, we're complete for today's session. But if anyone has anything that you'd like to share or add on, or any comments that you'd like to make in closing, then I invite you to step in. And if not, I'll let Leon have the last word as always.
Just seeing if there's anything from anyone before we say goodbye. Oh, this is fantastic. Wonderful questions, everyone. And thank you for this opportunity just to share a little more about this work with you. Obviously, it's very near and dear to my heart. It's also near and dear to Amrita's, Nidhi and Priyanka, and all those who are part of the Back to Source community. So yes, if this feels like, it's bringing you to life and you can feel that in yourself, then I would love to see you there. And you can always reach out to me or Amrita with questions. I'm available. You can reach me at leon@centerfortransformationalcoaching.com, centerfortransformationalcoaching.com. Leon.
Yeah.
I'm available for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Leon. Thank you, Amrita.
You're all welcome.
Amazing session.
Thank you.
Good night, folks.
Good night.
Bye.
Yeah.
Going to stop the recording?